He's the fourth and youngest son of Howard Darwin, a legend who was left motherless at the age of 6, but managed to establish a thriving jewelry store, help build the Civic Center and the Ottawa Baseball Stadium, and create the Ottawa 67s and the Ottawa Lynx. But 55-year-old Jeff Darwin has taken a different path, getting into banking than business consulting. Now he's taking on a new challenge as executive director of the city-owned Ottawa Markets Corporation, created January 1st to run the Byward and Parkdale markets. I spoke with Jeff on why he decided to take on the challenge and how he foresees the Byward market developing.
I led a very, very charmed childhood. Unlike my parents, and as you mentioned, it's being back in Ottawa, but I actually never really left. I'm born and raised, of course. I spent 6-8 months in Toronto and couldn't get back here quick enough. That was 2008. But so I'm born and raised in the West End. My parents, however, and thank you for bringing up my dad. My dad was born and raised on Nicholas Street. House is no longer there. My mom was born and raised on LeBreton Flats. Of course, house is no longer there. So they were born and raised here. Their parents were born and raised in Ottawa. So I consider myself quite fortunate to be able to work in my hometown. And in terms of being back in the market, that's an interesting story too, because actually I come to find out when I wrote my father's biography that my grandfather, so my dad's dad, Thomas Vincent Darwin, was a night watchman in this very building during the Second World War.
Isn't that interesting? The ties just keep popping up every time you turn around.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's. I knew there was a reason I felt comfortable here.
Now, your dad finished school at the age of 14, sold newspapers, worked hard, this is the classic pull yourself up by your bootstraps story. He got involved in the jewelry business, the sports business. You went into banking. Now, what possessed you to get into banking? What was the urge to do it?
Everyone knows my father and his legacy around Ottawa. Terrific guy, very, very involved in everything that he put his mind to. But I just didn't fancy myself working for him. Frankly, it was kind of the way I felt as a young adult. I had to strike out on my own. Probably something I regret, because I missed out on a lot of the great stories and a lot of the great things that happened while he was doing his primarily sports ventures around Ottawa, and I was doing banking, of all things, which was quite boring, frankly.
And that's why you ended up in Toronto and escaped after 8 months, I would assume?
I couldn't beat it back quick enough.
When you came back to Ottawa, you worked here, then you decided you were going to quit and go out on your own as a management consultant. Was that simply a reflection of the fact that A, you saw a need, and B, you were getting a little frustrated with what you were doing, or?
Exactly. It was same old, same old. It was very bureaucratic. The environment, it was wearing on me. So when I struck out and hung out a shingle as a management consultant, it gave me a chance to meet again with younger or new entrepreneurs and help get their businesses started up. There wasn't a lot of money in it, but it was a lot of fun getting businesses started. So then this opportunity came up, which is effectively a new business. The city decided to get out of the markets business and basically took everything with them, the forms, the staff, everything. So I got an opportunity January 1 of this year to start a brand new business in the birthplace of all commerce in Ottawa.
What possessed you to apply for this? What was the attraction of making your bid to manage both Byward and Parkdale markets under this new entity the city had created?
It was frankly the idea that it was going to be autonomous, and the city was going to cut all the ties and all the systems and everything that they had in place and allow me to start on a greenfields project right here in downtown Ottawa. So the idea of setting up banking and auditing and the systems, hiring staff is really what attracted me to it.
Now, the Byward market as an area has come in for a lot of criticism recently. Maybe some increased violence, too many bars, not enough other attractions out there. What do you see as the biggest issue facing the market in the Byward area right now?
Daytime activation. By and large, the families and kids have not been coming down to the market, or if they have been coming down as young adults, they come down at night for the bars and restaurants. So the biggest challenge that I have is daytime activation and getting people back down here through the day with their kids. And if we can achieve that, if there's more people wandering through here, particularly younger people, all the other problems, associated problems with the panhandling and so on, it disappears. We saw it last year with the 2017, the 150 celebrations. If you get tens of thousands of people down here, people stop complaining about the smaller stuff.
When you look at trying to attract people downtown to come to the market, I mean, you're faced with a lot of community weekend markets or late week markets that ended up being established around the city as well, farmers market style markets. What do you need to attract those people downtown?
Okay, they've done a terrific job. All the farmers market movement, which is actually a worldwide phenomenon, to kind of buy local and know the origin of your stuff, is really catching on. I need to learn from them and do a better job, frankly, of getting more local engagement from our vendors. The big issue, though, is those folks, the vendors themselves, have enough production typically for a day or two a week. And if we were to ask them to come down to the market 7 days a week, basically from May to October, that's more production than they actually have. So we gotta figure out a compromise as to how local we can make this market and still have it operating and vibrant 7 days a week.
What are some of the other ideas that you have? A lot of people have said, well, fine, you come down to the market, there's the same vendors, the same restaurants, the same bars, it's the same thing over and over again. What do you have to do to pique interest on a weekly and maybe almost on a daily basis? I work on the philosophy that I've learned, frankly, from Project for Public Spaces. And they do it on a place-making concept and the idea that there has to be 10 things to do. So 10 different things in the market area. And that's my objective. Well, I can get 10 separate things that a family can do while they're down here. I'll get them back again and again, maybe 4 or 5, 6 times a summer. My goal, my dream would be to have a Byward Market precinct which connects the parliamentary precinct a few steps up to the Sandy Hill, or what some people are talking about now, the Prime Minister's Row precinct, and have it all interconnected, mostly on foot. And it needs to be softened and greened up quite a bit. My vision is 5-10 years from now that you'll know absolutely you're in a different place as soon as you cross over, let's say, Rideau Street, for example. And that would be because you've got a pop-up notice saying you're now in a free Wi-Fi area. That the sidewalks perhaps are a different color, or they're raised up, or it's more pedestrian friendly. That there's music from the signposts and more flowers and greenery, so that you know that even the cleanliness standards, the number of garbage cans and how clean it is different in a separate precinct. So more of all of that and a lot better, so that as soon as you cross into the area through one of the major gateways, you know you're in a different place. One of the things that's always intrigued me about the Byward Market, and this is something you mentioned earlier, are the characters. What's it like to work here down in the market?
It's every day's an adventure, and it's generational too. So some of the first things I had to learn is some of the vendors can't work beside each other because their grandparents may have had a fist fight over a stall in the 50s, and so it's those type of things that they're not written down anywhere, and you can only find out by going out and talking with them in terms of who works better with who, and whose grandfather, frankly, got along with who, and that's the character of the market here.
New activities aren't the only thing that's needed. The Byward Market building itself, about 100 years old and the 5th version since it was first established 2 centuries ago, is in need of major maintenance and repairs, about $2.5 million worth. And the market's rents don't come anywhere close to paying for that.
Byward Market, does it become a real center of not only tourists, because there's lots of them, but city activity in, say, 5 years' time?
Yes. Yeah, it has to be. We need some reinvestment in the market, obviously. It has suffered from a little bit of neglect. And part of that issue is when you have a city as geographically large and diverse as Ottawa, they have standards for things like garbage pickup and grass cutting and that sort of thing, but it's the lowest common denominator. So that part of my issues with City Hall these days is I would like there to be more garbage cans and more frequent pickup and so on, but they say you can't have anything more than Canada or Orleans gets. And I'm saying, no, we can. We can make it a precinct, and we can make the standards here better because the world comes here. It's the number one tourist destination in Ottawa, probably one of the top ones in Canada. So people from as far away as Beijing, China are coming here on a regular basis, and it has to be different and held to a higher standard than an Orleans and Ottawa South. Right now, the figure we use quite often is on a typical summer day, there's about 50,000 east-west across the George Street Plaza. I think that number is going to jump up to about 100,000, but it's going to be sort of more north-south, and I think the major connecting points are going to be from the Rideau LRT station to the steps at Sussex, where the Ottawa letters are now. So I see the traffic patterns changing and only increasing with the LRT here.
Okay, Jeff Darwin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Norman.